The prison cell was dark, cold, and silent. A single dim light flickered from the ceiling, casting long shadows on the metal walls. The air smelled of oil and burning circuits. Ethan Cole sat against the wall, his back resting on the rough metal surface. He was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He was listening, not to the voices of his fellow prisoners, but to the ship itself. The hum of its engines, the distant clank of heavy machinery, the subtle shifts in temperature. These sounds told him more than any alien guard ever could. They were inside a Selvar warship, one of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy. The Selvar were a proud, warlike species who ruled over many planets. They had conquered weaker races, and now they thought they had conquered humans too. Their mistake. Ethan looked around at his team. There were 5 of them. Engineers, mechanics, problem solvers. They weren't soldiers. They didn't carry weapons, but they knew machines better than anyone. Across from him, Davis sat cross-legged, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "How long do you think they'll keep us in here?" he asked in a low voice. Ethan smirked. "Depends on how long it takes them to realize they made a mistake." Davis chuckled, but the others stayed quiet. Not out of fear, but because they were all thinking the same thing. Humans were known for their adaptability. They fixed things. They built things. And if necessary, they broke things. The door to the cell hissed open, and 2 Selvar guards stepped inside. Their tall, muscular frames were covered in dark blue armor, their red eyes glowing in the dim light. One of them, taller than the other, held a device in his hand. "You will be taken to the work chambers," he said in a deep metallic voice. "You will assist in repairing this vessel. Your cooperation will determine your survival." Ethan didn't react. He knew what this meant. The Selvar thought humans were just tools, useful for fixing things but incapable of resistance. They were wrong. The guards led them through a long metallic hallway. The ship's walls pulsed with energy, the lights casting an eerie glow. Other Selvar passed by, barely glancing at the prisoners. To them, this was routine. Just another group of lesser beings forced to work for the Empire. They reached a large chamber filled with control panels, engine components, and repair tools. Several Selvar engineers were already there, working on a damaged section of the ship. Sparks flew as they welded metal plates together. One of them barked orders in their native tongue, frustrated by the slow progress. The guard shoved Ethan forward. "Work," he ordered. Ethan looked at the mess of wires and broken machinery in front of him. The ship had suffered recent damage, probably from a battle. He crouched down, pretending to examine the problem. His hands moved over the controls, his fingers lightly tapping different surfaces. He wasn't just looking for a solution. He was looking for weaknesses. He exchanged a quick glance with Olivia, another mechanic on the team. She gave a small nod. She understood. As they worked, Ethan spoke quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Selvar don't trust us, but they don't fear us either. That's their mistake." Olivia kept her eyes on her work. "We need to find a way to turn this ship against them." Davis, working nearby, smirked. "Give me half an hour, and I'll have their security doors opening and closing on their own." Ethan allowed himself a small grin. "Let's start smaller. We need to test how much control we can take before they notice." He reached into a nearby toolset, picking up what looked like an ordinary scanner. But as he turned it over in his hands, he spotted something useful, a loose power cable running beneath the workstation. He carefully pulled it forward, pretending to inspect it. With a small movement, he twisted it slightly, just enough to cause a tiny power fluctuation. The lights above them flickered for half a second. One of the Selvar engineers frowned and checked his monitor. Seeing no major issue, he went back to work. Ethan and his team exchanged looks. That was the first test. They continued working, making small, almost invisible changes to the ship's systems. Each adjustment was minor, barely noticeable. But together, they would add up to something bigger. After an hour, the first real sign of trouble appeared. A Selvar technician cursed as one of the doors refused to open. Another console began glitching, its screen flashing with strange symbols. The engineers muttered to each other, confused. Ethan suppressed a smile. The guards, however, were getting impatient. One of them pointed at Ethan. Faster. Ethan raised his hands in mock surrender. Hey, you want quality work or rushed work? The guard growled but didn't push further. As Ethan bent down to adjust another panel, he whispered to Olivia, "We need to find the main control hub. If we can get in there." She nodded. "We can take this ship apart from the inside." Before they could do anything more, an alarm blared through the ship. Red lights flashed across the room. The guards immediately reached for their weapons, their eyes scanning the area. "What now?" One of them barked. A voice crackled over the intercom in the Selvar language, rapid and urgent. Ethan couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Something was wrong. The guards turned to the prisoners. One of them pointed his weapon at Ethan. "Stay here. Move, and you die." Then they rushed out of the room, leaving only a single guard behind. Ethan exhaled slowly. He turned to his team. "That's our chance." Davis grinned. "I thought you'd never say that." The lone Selvar guard, standing near the door, had his attention focused on his communicator, listening to the chaotic reports coming from other sections of the ship. He never saw Olivia move. With a swift motion, she grabbed a heavy metal tool from the workstation and brought it down hard on the back of the guard's head. He collapsed instantly. The humans quickly dragged the unconscious body into a corner. Ethan knelt beside the alien's weapon, examining it. "Let's hope we don't need to use this." Olivia pulled up a map on a nearby control panel. "The ship's main control hub is 3 decks above us." Davis grinned. "Then let's get to work." Ethan stood up, looking at his team. They weren't soldiers. They weren't trained for combat. But they were human. And humans had a way of fixing problems, even when the problem was an entire alien warship. The ship's alarms continued blaring, red warning lights flashing along the walls. Ethan and his team moved quickly, keeping their steps light as they made their way through the dimly lit corridors. Every second counted. The Selvar were distracted by whatever emergency had triggered the alert, but that wouldn't last forever. If they were going to take control of this ship, they needed to act fast. Davis tapped into a nearby control panel, his fingers moving quickly over the alien interface. The screen flickered as he accessed the ship's internal systems. "I can override some doors, maybe even lock down sections of the ship," he whispered. "But their security's gonna catch on fast." Ethan nodded. "Then we move before they do." He glanced back at Olivia and the others. "We head for the control hub. If we can take over navigation, we control where this ship goes." The hallway stretched ahead, empty but filled with tension. The ship was massive, its design unfamiliar yet strangely logical. It wasn't built for comfort, only efficiency. Pipes ran along the ceiling, and strange energy conduits pulsed with a dull blue light beneath their feet. They moved in single file, every step measured. A sudden sound made them freeze. Footsteps. Heavy, armored boots clanking against the metal floor. The Selvar were coming. Ethan signaled to the others, and they pressed themselves against the walls, slipping into the shadows. The alien soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor, their weapons raised as they hurried past. They were speaking in their harsh, guttural language, their voices filled with urgency. Whatever was happening on the ship had them on edge. As soon as the soldiers were out of sight, the humans moved again, quick and silent. They reached an intersection where a massive bulkhead blocked their path. Davis cursed under his breath, moving to the nearby control panel. "Locked," he muttered. "Looks like security's already tightening up." Olivia stepped forward, inspecting the panel. "Can you override it?" Davis exhaled. "Maybe. But it's gonna take time, and we don't have much of that." Ethan scanned the area. A ventilation shaft ran along the side of the corridor, just large enough for a person to crawl through. He pointed at it. "That lead anywhere." Davis checked the schematics. It connects to maintenance tunnels. Could be useful. Ethan turned to Olivia. You take the shaft and see if you can find another way to the control hub. Davis and I will hold here and try to force the doors. Olivia hesitated for only a second before nodding. She unfastened the panel. Slipping inside. The metal walls were cold and the space was tight, but she moved quickly. Every breath sounded louder than it should. She crawled forward, her heart pounding. Back in the hallway, Davis worked furiously on the control panel while Ethan stood guard. The sounds of movement in the distance kept them tense. Any moment now, the Selvar could come back. Davis gritted his teeth. Almost there. The screen flashed green. The bulkhead door hissed open. Ethan gave a sharp nod. They hurried through, closing the door behind them just as voices echoed down the hallway. A second later, fists pounded against the metal. The Selvar knew they were here. Davis smirked. Guessed they found out. Ethan ignored him, pulling up the map on his stolen Selvar tablet. The control hub is one level up. We need tow. A sudden explosion rocked the ship, shaking the floor beneath them. The emergency lights flickered. The alarms changed tone, shifting into something more urgent. Davis steadied himself. That didn't sound good. Ethan frowned. No, it didn't. Then the intercom crackled to life, and a deep guttural voice filled the corridors. The Selvar commander was speaking, but this time, his tone was different. It wasn't anger. It was fear. The ship trembled as another explosion echoed through its metal halls. The emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Ethan steadied himself, his mind racing. Something was wrong. More wrong than just their escape attempt. That Selvar weren't in control anymore. Davis checked the alien console. His fingers flew over the controls, trying to pull up any information. This isn't just us, he muttered. Something else is happening. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He could feel it in the air, the tension, the uncertainty. The Selvar were scrambling, their usual arrogance replaced with chaos. That meant an opportunity. They needed to reach Olivia. She had crawled through the ventilation shaft, looking for another way to the control hub. If something had gone wrong, she might be in trouble. Ethan motioned for Davis to follow. They moved quickly through the corridors, keeping to the shadows. The ship's layout was complex, but they had studied enough of it to know where to go. As they turned a corner, they spotted a group of Selvar soldiers ahead. But these soldiers weren't organized. They were panicked. Their weapons were raised, but they weren't aiming at anything, just looking around, confused and anxious. Ethan held up a fist, signaling Davis to stop. They pressed against the cold metal wall, listening. One of the Selvar barked something in their guttural language. Another answered, his voice shaking. They weren't talking about escaped prisoners. They were talking about something inside the ship. Then a blood-curdling scream ripped through the halls. It was Selvar, and it was close. The soldiers stiffened, turning their weapons in the direction of the sound. But they didn't fire. They were afraid to. Ethan exchanged a glance with Davis. What the hell is going on? Davis whispered. Ethan had no answer, but he knew one thing. The longer they stayed here, the more dangerous it became. They moved away from the soldiers, taking another route through the ship. Every few seconds, the ship shuddered again. Something was tearing through the Selvar, and whatever it wasn't human. After several tense minutes, they reached an access hatch leading to the upper level. Ethan climbed first, with Davis close behind. The metal was slick with something dark, something that smelled wrong. When they reached the top, Olivia was already waiting for them. Her face was pale, her breathing fast. I found the control hub, she whispered, but we have a bigger problem. Ethan didn't need to ask. From the corridor ahead, they could hear it. The sound of something moving, something fast, something hunting. Ethan motioned for Olivia and Davis to stay low as they crept through the darkened corridor. The flickering lights above barely illuminated the path ahead, but the sounds of chaos around them were impossible to miss. That Selvar were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. Another scream echoed through the ship, this time closer. It was followed by a deep guttural growl, something not of human or Selvar origin. Ethan tightened his grip on the stolen Selvar weapon. Whatever was loose on this ship, it wasn't here to make friends. They reached the control hub's entrance, a massive reinforced door. Olivia had already bypassed the outer security, but the final lock required physical access from the inside. Ethan glanced at Davis. "Think you can get this open fast?" Davis exhaled sharply. "Fast as I can." He knelt beside the panel, working quickly, his fingers moving over the alien interface. "Cover me." Ethan and Olivia turned their weapons toward the hallway behind them. The ship groaned as another explosion rocked its frame. Sparks rained down from the ceiling, and the distant sound of rapid footsteps sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Then they saw it. A Selvar soldier sprinted toward them, his armor dented, his breathing ragged. His forearms were covered in blackened burns, his weapon missing. His large, reptilian eyes were wide with terror. He wasn't attacking. He was running. Before Ethan could react, the soldier was yanked off his feet, disappearing into the darkness with an inhuman screech. A sickening crunch followed. Then silence. Davis swore under his breath, his hands shaking as he worked on the panel. Almost there. Ethan kept his eyes on the shadows ahead. He could hear something breathing. Low, deep, deliberate. It wasn't moving like an animal. It was waiting. The door hissed open. Olivia pulled Davis inside, and Ethan followed, slamming the control panel to close the entrance behind them. The door sealed shut just as something heavy crashed against it from the other side. A deep growl reverberated through the metal. Then silence. Ethan turned to Olivia. "What the hell is happening?" She pulled up the ship's internal feed. The control hub had access to every camera, every security log. The footage on the screens showed that Selvar ship in complete disarray. Fires burned in different sections. Selvar bodies lay scattered across the halls, but many of them weren't just dead. They had been torn apart. Davis leaned in, eyes wide. What did they do? Olivia pointed at one of the monitors. A lab. Inside, Selvar scientists huddled in terror. The room was locked down, but something was pounding against the glass from the other side. Ethan's stomach turned as the camera focused. The thing outside wasn't Selvar. It wasn't human. It was something else. Something that Selvar had created. And now, they had lost control. Ethan stared at the monitor, his jaw tightening. The thing outside that Selvar lab door wasn't just dangerous. It was unnatural. Its body was a twisted mix of organic muscle and metallic plating, moving with unnatural speed. Its elongated limbs twitched as it slammed against the reinforced glass, leaving deep cracks with every impact. The Selvar scientists inside were frantic, trying to activate some sort of defense system, but their efforts looked desperate. Davis swallowed hard. What the hell did they make? Olivia's fingers flew over the control panel, searching the ship's database. The logs were heavily encrypted, but she managed to pull up partial records. What she found made her breath hitch. They were experimenting with something called Project Dreadform, she said. Genetic modification, cybernetic enhancements, and human engineering. Ethan's stomach twisted. Human engineering. Olivia nodded, her voice tight. They captured humans, studied our nervous systems, our adaptability. Then they mixed that data with their own tech, tried to make something stronger than both species combined. She pointed at the screen. That thing is the result. Davis let out a shaky laugh. Well, congratulations to them. They did it, and now it's killing everything in sight. Another loud crash echoed through the ship, shaking the walls. The thing had broken through the lab door. The screen showed that Selvar scientists screaming as the creature lunged at them. The feed cut to static. Ethan clenched his fists. We need to get out of here. Olivia looked up. We could vent it into space. Davis scoffed. Yeah, and how do we get it into an airlock? Ask nicely. Ethan ignored him, studying the ship's map. The main cargo bay had massive exterior doors for offloading supplies. If they could lure the creature there, they could eject it into the void. But first, they had to survive long enough to do it. A loud metallic scraping noise came from outside the control hub. The thing was near. It wasn't blindly rampaging anymore. It was hunting. Ethan motioned for the others to move quietly. They couldn't stay here. The control hub was a dead end. If the creature got inside, they'd have nowhere to run. Olivia pointed at a secondary exit on the map. Service tunnels. They run behind the main corridors. We can use them to reach the cargo bay without being seen. Davis nodded. Great. Let's go before we end up like the Xelvar. Ethan led the way, pushing open the emergency hatch. The tunnel beyond was cramped and dark, the air thick with the scent of burnt metal and something worse, something rotten. They climbed inside, sealing the hatch behind them. The moment it closed, they heard it, a deep guttural breathing. The creature was right outside. It had found them. The tunnel was pitch black, the air thick with tension. Ethan held his breath, listening. The heavy, guttural breathing on the other side of the hatch was slow, deliberate. The creature wasn't moving. It was waiting. Davis clenched his fists, his breathing shallow. Olivia tapped her wrist console, bringing up a faint light, barely enough to illuminate their faces. The service tunnel stretched far ahead, a tight, confined space that made retreat nearly impossible. If the creature got inside, they wouldn't have a chance. Ethan motioned for them to move. Slowly, carefully, they crawled forward, the metal beneath them creaking with each shift of their weight. The tunnel was narrow, lined with exposed wires and rusted pipes. It smelled of old oil and something more metallic. Blood. A sudden noise echoed behind them. A loud clang, followed by a deep, snarling growl. The creature had slammed against the hatch, testing it. Olivia stifled a gasp. Ethan reached back, gripping her wrist, signaling her to stay quiet. Another impact. Then another. The metal groaned, bending under the force. Davis whispered, "That thing's gonna get through." Ethan knew it too. They had minutes, maybe seconds. If they didn't move fast, the creature would tear through the hatch and rip them apart before they could reach the cargo bay. They pushed forward, crawling as fast as they could without making noise. Every sound felt deafening. The scraping of metal beneath their knees, the faint hum of the ship's failing systems. Then suddenly, movement ahead. Ethan froze. A dim red emergency light flickered at the end of the tunnel, revealing a grated vent leading into the cargo bay. But there was something else. A shadow moved beyond the vent. Not the creature. A Xelvar soldier. He was injured, slumped against the wall, his armor torn and covered in blackened blood. His forearms trembled as he tried to reload his weapon. His breathing was ragged, eyes filled with terror. He hadn't noticed them yet. Ethan made a choice. He kicked the vent open. The sound startled the Xelvar, who raised his weapon instinctively. Ethan was faster. He lunged forward, slamming the alien against the wall, pinning his lower arms. The Xelvar gasped, trying to speak. Ethan didn't let go. "You want to live," he whispered. The alien's terrified eyes darted between them and the tunnel. Another loud boom echoed from where they had come. The creature was breaking through. Ethan released the Xelvar and stepped back. "Help us, or we all die." The Xelvar hesitated, then nodded. There was no time to waste. The final battle had just begun. The Xelvar soldier clutched his weapon tightly, his injured limbs trembling. His reptilian eyes darted between Ethan and the tunnel entrance. Another deafening boom echoed through the service shaft. The creature was nearly through. Ethan stepped forward. "You know this ship better than we do. We need to lure that thing into the cargo bay." The Xelvar hesitated. Then, in a rasping voice, he said, "You do not understand." It does not hunt for food. It hunts for sport. Olivia cursed under her breath. Great. A sadistic monster. Just what we needed. That Selvar pointed to a control panel near the bay doors. We can override safety locks, open the exterior hatch. But he winced in pain, gripping his side. Someone must be in the control booth to release the magnetic locks manually. Davis scowled. And I'm guessing that means one of us gets to be bait. Another boom. Then a shriek. High-pitched, metallic, unnatural. The hatch behind them bent inward. It wouldn't hold much longer. Ethan clenched his jaw. I'll do it. No. Olivia grabbed his arm. If you die, we don't make it out of here. Ethan looked at the others. Davis was fast, but not a fighter. Olivia was their tech expert. That Selvar was already injured. That left only one option. I'll draw it in, Ethan said. Once it's inside, you open the hatch. No hesitation. Davis swallowed hard. That's suicide. Ethan forced a grin. Only if you screw up. Before anyone could argue, he grabbed a fallen Selvar rifle, fired a shot into the air, and took off running. The moment the sound echoed, the creature screeched in response. A rapid, scraping movement followed as it burst through the tunnel entrance. Ethan didn't look back. He ran straight into the massive cargo bay, his boots slamming against the metal floor. The ship groaned around him. Fires still burned in some sections, smoke rising to the ceiling. He skidded to a stop near the center of the bay and turned, gripping the rifle tight. Then he saw it. The creature was massive, easily twice the height of a man. Its elongated limbs twitched unnaturally. Metal plating fused into its skin. Its face was an unholy fusion of organic muscle and synthetic wiring. Glowing red eyes locked onto him. It screeched again, then lunged. Ethan rolled to the side, barely avoiding its razor-sharp claws. He fired, but the plasma rounds barely slowed it down. It moved with horrifying speed, twisting its body in ways no living thing should. Now, he shouted. From above, Olivia and Davis activated the cargo bay doors. A red warning light flashed. Emergency sirens blared. The creature paused, sensing the change in pressure. Then, with unnatural intelligence, it spun and leaped toward the control booth. Open it, Ethan roared. The Selvar slammed his palm against the final release. The massive exterior doors groaned and began to part. A powerful vacuum force pulled everything toward the void. The creature screeched, digging its claws into the floor, fighting against the pull. Ethan grabbed onto a nearby railing as the air rushed past him. Crates and debris flew out into space. The monster clawed its way forward, refusing to be taken. Ethan gritted his teeth. He had one chance. He let go. The sudden release sent him flying straight toward the creature. At the last second, he twisted his body, slamming both feet into its chest. The impact broke its grip. With one final, piercing shriek, the creature was sucked into the abyss. Ethan flailed, his body spinning toward the edge. Then, something grabbed his arm. Davis. Got you. With Olivia and the Selvar's help, they hauled him back just as the emergency doors sealed shut. The pressure stabilized. The alarms died down. And for the first time in hours, there was silence. Ethan lay on the floor, gasping for breath. Then he laughed. A tired, disbelieving laugh. Davis collapsed next to him. You're insane. Ethan smirked. And yet, we're still alive. The Selvar soldier stared at them, then at the sealed doors. You killed it. Ethan shook his head. No, we just threw it into space. His expression darkened. And if the Selvar made one, who's to say there aren't more? Olivia looked at the others. Then we better make sure no one ever tries this again. Ethan stood, gripping his rifle. Let's go. We have a ship to take.